all very new to me, so I hope you'll all kind of bear with me, assuming you can hear me. But yeah, this is my Patreon monthly live stream, number 1 for January 2018. And I noticed there are 8 of you watching, so thank you so much. There's a potential of 51 who are eligible for this reward. And as you know, it's something I've been anxious to do, is reward people who are supporting my work. Obviously, the Patreon has been up and running for a while now, and I know there are those who they're fully justified in not offering rewards, but it's just started to grate on me. So I set up the reward system, and one of the rewards is this live stream. So I'll get things up and running with a couple of questions that came in from the Patreon posts related to this live stream. Let me see here. And if you think of any questions, just type them away in the chat and I'll hopefully get round to answering them. So, okay, so let's see. What would you recommend to someone who is considering coming out to their hardcore Jehovah's Witness family? It wouldn't be a productive discussion and wouldn't yield any real results in terms of a mutual understanding. The 42 plus years of family indoctrination is too ingrained. I'm not afraid of disfellowshipping. I've been disfellowshipped twice before and would like to share my story with you another time, but I do have concerns about hurting my elderly parents. Some friends tell me to step up to the plate and bite the bullet. Other friends tell me that there's no point in hurting them and I should just continue doing what I'm doing, being secretive. I have the support of my grown children, non-Jehovah's Witnesses, and worldly husband to move in either direction. I'd respect your opinion. Listen, it's difficult to give any kind of firm advice on what to do in that situation, because only you can deal with the consequences. So you have to face the ramifications, and it seems in this instance what you're most worried about is the way your elderly parents will react emotionally to you no longer believing. I guess the only thing I would say, and again, it's entirely your decision what route you take. It's that I've obviously been in a situation where I've had to disappoint my father. Granted, he's not really elderly, but I've had to disappoint him. And I think no matter how old they are, it's still, no child likes to disappoint their parent. But I don't really have any regrets about the reaction, because I feel as though I feel that it's something that they get used to, or they have to get used to, because they have their time on this planet. They get to live their life the way they choose, and they can't really expect or demand that you live that you replicate their life, that you follow their footsteps exactly. There's bound to be differences. So it probably will be distressing, and if they're really, like if they have heart problems, for example, I would probably agree that it's too much to put them through. But I don't think purely being elderly is a reason to withhold that kind of conversation from them, because they're adults, and I think that bottom line, they need to respect your rights as an adult to do whatever you like with your life. But again, it's entirely your decision. I hope I've done that question some justice. I'm not seeing any questions so far, although there are 12 of you watching. So whether there's something going wrong with the questions, I do have another one lined up. And then if you like, I can speak a little bit about the channel and Patreon and that kind of thing, and what's in store for January. So let me look at the other question that someone sent in. I would love you to discuss if Watchtower ever answers to letters asking about doctrine. If they don't, how do they act regarding this? Do they do something or just ignore the letter? I'm PMO, I love that, physically in, mentally out, and still waiting for my answer 3 months after sending the letter. Well, Jemekro, however that's pronounced. Thanks so much for the question. Honestly, I don't know what is done nowadays with correspondence when witnesses writing with questions. I can actually remember sending in my own question when I was around the age of 19 or 20. I was working with someone, I actually write about it in my book. I was having conversations with a guy called Nigel, who was kind of my ministry partner for a while. And I'd throw these issues that I was having at him, and for one or two of them he said, "Oh, you should write to the branch, you should write to Watchtower." And one of those issues was the use of the Watchtower emblem, the Watchtower logo. It seemed like a rather idolatrous thing to have the Watchtower logo appear on the spines of books and on at the ends of videos and that kind of thing. And I did get a reply back from, I think it was the branch, from the London branch, with a really weird answer about, oh, well, they had pomegranates decorating the temple in Jerusalem, so therefore, so long as it's purely decorative, we get to use a Watchtower logo. So I wasn't buying it at all. But whether they're answering correspondence today, I have no idea. I know there has been material printed in the Watchtower to the effect that they would rather witnesses didn't write into the branch with questions. But as far as I know, they will still reply to letters on a case-by-case basis. And while answering that, I've had some questions through. Wow. Okay. So Sherry says, "G'day Lloyd, silly question. We miss seeing the bookshelf behind you. What's up?" That is not a silly question. That's an excellent question, Sherry. I actually love filming in front of the bookshelf. It's my preferred backdrop. It's my preferred place to shoot videos. The only problem I have is Jessica. So when you're a dad, you pretty quickly learn to make concessions in life. From the moment they're born, you have to concede sleep, you have to concede all sorts of things. And with my YouTube life, I've had to learn to make concessions there as well. So basically, the bookshelf is available to me when Jessica isn't playing in there, or when she's not likely to burst in or make loads of noise. All of the times I need to film in here, and those of you who follow the channel closely, presumably that applies to all of you, will remember the Watchtower in Focus episodes where there was this kind of brownish grey backdrop and it was very dimly lit. Well, that is actually this room, and we had it redecorated, so I'm kind of hoping that it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing now for when I do need to retreat in here. But I do always prefer filming in front of the bookshelves, and if I can at all help it, I will film as many videos in front of the bookshelves as possible, because apart from the aesthetics and the nice bright colours, it's also just useful to pull out a book if I happen to talk about it. So I'm mindful of that. Good question though. Dan asks, says you pronounce Jemekro right. Excellent. I love pronouncing things right. I don't do that often. Thanks for discussing the matter. My absolute pleasure. Thank you for being a patron. Canal do Urim says, have you read the book The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion? Jonathan Haidt. It has helped a lot to understand the tribalism mindset. I haven't read that book, but it sounds absolutely fascinating. And I think that tribalism is a big problem in society. And I was talking quite a lot along these lines. Obviously, we had my good friend Alex O'Connor to stay recently, and I was explaining to him a little bit of my political philosophy and how I'm kind of more out. I'm more outreaching, if that's how I can describe things, when it comes to other, including people and people coming together from different countries, rather than this tribalism that we're increasingly seeing nowadays. And it's something that you see not just in religion, but in nationalism as well. And it sounds like a fascinating book if it's dealing with that. So I will gladly take you up on your recommendation. Guess I'll let you know if I'll get any answer. Okay, I don't know what that's talking about. Sorry. Sherry says, like that British politician's interview. I'm probably I'm probably picking up on things that you've been saying while I've been giving answers. So now I don't know. I'm sorry. I should have been keeping a closer eye. I guess to do a question justice, I feel like I really need to focus in on the thing. And so, but thank you for keeping the chat going. At least you're all following it between yourselves, and that's really nice to see. How about the current status of the documentary, asks Canaldo Urim. The current status of the documentary is that we're still working on it. I'm in quite frequent contact with Javier. We have plans to do some filming across the Atlantic at some point soon, possibly in Canada. Oh, are we back? Hopefully we're back now. Sorry about that. I just had a thing come up saying we're offline. I'm here, so hopefully you're all there still. I can't remember what I was saying now. Yes, my creative process. So I'm not good with very, very long, drawn out things that take a lot of time and emotion to create, which is not the best thing when you're making a documentary that might take years, or is taking years to put together. So I'm just having to learn to be patient with it. But suffice to say, there's been a lot of work put in on it, and there will continue to be work put in on it. And hopefully at some point you'll see an end product with that. Let me see. Jacqueline Shaw says, this live stream is cool, thank you. When will your next book be ready, and what plans do you have for 2018 films topics? That's a very good question. Okay, along nicely, thank you. And what plans do you have for 2018 films topics? Well, 2018, it's going to be, well, first of all, it's going to be an interesting month in January. That's obviously 1/12 of 2018. There's some really, I'm really thrilled about the interviews that you will see over the next few weeks. So when it comes to interviews, what I tend to do is I pick a bunch of names that I'd really like to speak to kind of fairly urgently, and I send out a bunch of requests, knowing that probably only half of them will be in a position to speak to me. You know, they're either too busy, or it's just not the right time, or whatever. And so I sent out a bunch of requests, and all bar one said yes. And these are like names that I'm genuinely really excited about having on the channel. So expect some eyebrow-raising interviews in January, and I'll try and maintain that momentum throughout the year. That's interviews. I've got one or two interesting ideas for the next documentary film, and it's a little bit too early to talk about it. It will probably involve me travelling to Britain or America, but then I'm hoping to do a bit of travelling this year anyway. So I guess I just want to continue pushing the boundaries a little bit with the channel and trying to come up with, interesting new content. I also want to do a video on blood transfusions at some point to add to my kind of catalogue of videos that deal with core issues, such as the child abuse video, the UN video, and the 607 video. I'd like to make one on blood transfusions. So that's kind of where my plans are for 2018. Alicia Rondeau, I hope I said that correctly. What do you think? Up again. You guys are still bearing with me. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I guess you just have to bear in mind that we're having this conversation from multiple countries, and I'm here in Croatia, and you're probably, many thousands of miles away. So thank you so much for bearing with me through this. Back to Alicia's question on In Search of Christian Freedom. Look, Crisis of Conscience was a cover-to-cover page turner for me, because it was so explosive in what it was telling me about Watchtower history. It was stuff that I genuinely didn't know, and there was also the compelling narrative woven into the book of Ray's story, which I tried to replicate a little bit that style when I was writing The Reluctant Apostate, because it's one thing to kind of be discussing fact. It's another thing entirely when there's a human element and you're pursuing what's happening to someone. So Crisis of Conscience was just wow, mind blown. In Search of Christian Freedom, I tend to refer to it as a reference book. So there's certain chapters that have been invaluable. For example, I referred quite extensively to the chapter on blood when I was writing my own chapter, just to hear what Ray had to say on the subject, so that could help inform my thinking, my approach. So there are definitely some fantastic bits of information in there, but I've tended to use it more as like a buffet rather than sitting through it and reading it cover to cover. But I agree that it's a very good book. Jacqueline Shaw asks, are you aware of anyone who is being interviewed for Leah Remini's show on cults? I've heard that there have been interviews and that there has been work started, but I'm honestly at this stage, I'm not in on that circle, so I can't honestly tell you what's happening there. But I'm just as excited as everyone else to see what Leah does, even if it's just one episode. I was kind of hoping it would be a series or a season maybe, but as long as there's something. So let's see, is everyone there still? Saying I have a bad connection. You're back. Sorry about that, everyone. You really must blame YouTube, but again, we should be grateful, I suppose, that we can do this at all. And it's thanks to the advancement of science and technology. Say 6 House 7. This was a common argument I heard growing up regarding why witnesses do not vote. The claim obviously being that you share the guilt for what those you help gain a position of power do with that power. I'm struggling with the context to that. Yes, I would agree that you do. I think that's one of the issues with voting, and this is the thing. When you get out of the witnesses, you have to come to terms with the fact that it is a broken world, that not everything is perfect, that there are issues that we need to contend with. And when it comes to voting, well, democracy is essentially a case of choosing the better of, what's the word? How do you describe it? The least of the two evils. I can't. The phrasing escapes me now, probably because of the nerves. But you know what I mean. You have to choose an option where you have to make compromises, because not everything you necessarily agree with, and that is definitely an issue with voting, and it's problematic when you're when you're strategically voting because you don't want the other candidate to get in or the other party to get in, but you're voting for a party or a candidate where you don't agree with everything. There's definite issues there. I hope I've made some degree of sense. Canal.urim says, have you considered a video collaboration with Apostate Chick or the channel XJW Critical Thinker? Is the stream still on? I'm always interested in collaborations. I just, how can I put it? I think collaborations need to happen organically, and I don't think they can be forced. And I'd rather do that. I'd rather it happen kind of organically as a result of conversations behind the scenes and kind of reaching a decision on what's to be talked about and you know how we can build on things. I don't think it's just simply a case of, oh well we're all ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and we're all on YouTube, therefore it's inevitable that we'll have a productive conversation. I prefer to be a little bit more give a little bit more thought to things when I'm doing collaborations, but I'm definitely always open, or like to think I'm open to collaborations. Now we have had an email through on I've had a voicemail through, so just to break things up a little bit, and because I'm a little bit frightened of speaking a load of nonsense if you guys just bombard me with questions, I'm going to play an MP3 of a voicemail that we've just had through from Topher Spinato. So I'm just downloading it now, just bear with me. Okay. You see, this is what I don't like about live streams and why I've tried to avoid them to some degree, because when you're a YouTuber, or when you're a perfectionist YouTuber like me, you take great delight in editing things so that everything's seamless. There's no downtime. Everything just boom, boom, boom follows in a nice quick succession. So I really hate awkward silences and trying to, you know. But here is a message, hopefully. Oh, hang on a minute. I need to disengage my headphones and try again.
In my 31 years as a JW, I never could make the truth my own. I was disfellowshipped for smoking weed. My entire family has disowned me and disfellowshipped me. My father has been an elder for about 30 years. I've recently started collecting meteorites. I feel more of a connection to the meteorites than I do to the Bible.
So I don't know whether you guys caught that, but Topher was saying that he's been disfellowshipped, and quite tragic really when you think of the impact that Watchtower's having on families. And he says that he has more of a connection with meteorites that he's collecting than he has with the Bible. Well, I definitely sympathise with that. I think that once you do, you know, start to look at the Bible objectively, and you start to do research on the authenticity and who the Bible writers were, and you see what scholars have to say, it just gets problematic, doesn't it? You find it harder and harder to understand how you could have invested so much time and energy into the Bible. I'm trying to find my... you must bear with me. I somehow managed to close the screen where I had the... oh, there we are. Okay, I found the screen again so I can read the questions. Is there any plan for another travel to USA in 2018, asks Canal.urim. Yes, there is. Well, there's no firm plans yet. I haven't booked flights, but I do want to return to America in 2018, and Deanna does as well. So if we can make it across there for another tour, I think we were kind of taken aback a little bit by how successful the last tour was in terms of the numbers that were turning up. We started off in New York and there weren't that many there, and then we went on to Baltimore and there were a few more there, and by the time we got to Vancouver, it felt as though with each event there were more and more people coming. I don't know why that was, but it was a very, very rewarding experience to actually be meeting people in person, because it's one thing for me to be doing things like this and to be interacting with people online, but when you're actually there in person with people and you're able to put a face to the name, it's a profound experience and very almost addictive. So if I can get across to America again in 2018, I would love to. Carmelo Rosado III. Lost you for a second, but you're back. Yes, I'm afraid, Carmelo, the connection is a problem on this live chat, so sorry about that. Let me just scroll down. Canal has another question. How tuned do you think the governing body are to your channel and to what the apostates are saying on the internet about them? I've no idea. I've no idea whether the governing body knows what's going on YouTube. It wouldn't surprise me if one or two of them know something. And probably if we were to go to governing body helper level, because obviously there's the governing body and then there's like 40 odd governing body helpers, I think we're then getting it more likely that one of them is familiar with what XJW YouTubers like myself are doing. But I think to exist at that level in the organisation, to function on a day-to-day basis as such a crucial cog in the wheel of Watchtower, you need to be pretty clueless as to what your critics are saying, and kind of you kind of need to ignore it, really. So I try not to think too much about whether the governing body are paying attention. Let's see. Canal also asks, what about the guitar in the background? Do you play? Have you been in a JW boy while a teenager? I assume you mean band. I've been in a band, not as a teenager, but when I was in my 20s, I was in 2 or 3 bands actually. And I do play the guitar, just not incredibly well. I kind of do campfire standard guitar playing, nothing intricate. I'm not a Jimi Hendrix by any stretch, but I do play a little bit of guitar. And actually, I've done 1 or 2. Some of you will remember my Good Things, Bad Things song. That was me on the guitar. I'm hoping that I can kind of sort of revisit it, but it's problematic, I think, to continue with music once you're doing this kind of work. It's because this is kind of draining me of my creativity, and it's hard to balance that with the unique creativity that's required when it comes to music. Carmelo Rosado III, the shepherding book clearly states that once it has been established that a sin has been committed, no more detail is required. As an elder, I had to actually stop judicial committees because other elders were asking a lot more detail than required, and they were clearly getting off on it. Have you heard similar stories? Yes, I have heard similar stories. In fact, I've been on the receiving end of that kind of attention in a judicial committee as the one who was being interrogated, and so I know firsthand that it happens. During my year as an elder, I was very fortunate that I never had to be in a judicial committee, and I never had to therefore disfellowship anyone. So that's one thing I'm very grateful of, and I just hope, or I would like to think, that if I ever had been asked to be in a judicial committee, I wouldn't have delighted in delving into details on that kind of thing. But unfortunately, you just never know, because power can do strange things to people, can't it? And I suppose you could be a really nice elder, a really kind of normal, level-headed guy, but when the power gets to your head in that kind of situation, it wouldn't surprise me if if you start kind of overstepping the mark, so to speak. Sherry D'Souza asks or says, Sasha and I have often commented on how many awaken to the truth about the truth after having been very active as either appointed ones, elders, ministerial servants, pioneers, Bethelites, MTS graduates, etc. Why do you think that is? I don't know why that is, Sherry, but I do agree that there seems to be, how can I put it? I think that when you have been in a predicament, in a situation where you've had power or some kind of position within the organisation, it's giving you the ability to see parts of the organisation that you probably wouldn't ordinarily see if, say, you were a sister. So especially if you're an elder, you're going to get an inside look at how things happen in the organisation that you're just not going to get as an ordinary publisher. And I also think that elders and servants probably feel a little bit more entitled to look behind the curtain, because they think, well, you know, I'm spiritually strong, I've had all these positions and privileges in the past. If I look at this apostate website, it's not going to make a huge deal, so I'm ready for it, bring it on. They have that kind of, you know, not naivety, more like arrogance. But what's interesting is that on the JW survey results, we're seeing that the vast majority, well, not the vast majority, a large majority of respondents to the JW, the Jehovah's Witnesses Global Survey, are male. And when I look at my Google Analytics, I see the same thing, that funnily enough, the majority of my viewers, for whatever reason, I don't know, but the majority are male. And I can't think of why that would be, other than what, you know, the ideas that I've come up with. But I guess you'd need to be better qualified than me to figure out exactly what the dynamics are. Canal de Urim says, I'm from Brazil. Wow, are you watching from Brazil? That's just incredible. Here I am in Croatia. You're watching in Brazil. There's probably a bunch of you in America or Canada. So thank you so much. I feel privileged. I started a channel inspired in your work. Here the YouTubers that talk about the organisation have a more religious mindset. I can imagine that in Brazil. So I would really like to thank you for your secular view of the religion. It has helped me a lot during my process of awakening. That's very kind of you to say. Actually, I feel as though when I first started my activism work, there wasn't really much going on in terms of secular thought. If you went on the forums, you would get debates between atheists and believers, and there were definitely atheists around, but it didn't feel as though atheists were very well represented on YouTube. In fact, I can't really think of and maybe they were there, but I can't think of atheist XJW YouTubers who I was kind of familiar with when I was first kind of waking up. But I guess it's inevitable that eventually that things are going to shift in that direction, because the atheist, secular, humanist movement has been kind of in its infancy, let's say from the beginning of this century, and it's just in the last few years that the movement's really starting to gain momentum, to the point where I was talking with Hemant Mehta in our interview, and he was saying that, you know, it's having teething trouble. It's so big now that there's such a diversity of views that there are battles going on and people falling out with each other, which to a degree we're also having in the XJW movement. So when you have friction and you have people disagreeing with each other, that's actually a good sign, because it means that you've won a few victories and you're now big enough for there to be disagreement. But I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing in Brazil, and I wish you well with it. And who knows, maybe maybe if I get the chance, I can come and join you there. I'd love to visit that country. Carmelo Rosado III says, that's exactly it. Once you see how things work on the inside, if you have a decent ethical code, you start getting bothered with what goes on. Yeah, again, I can only imagine that being a main reason why there is this imbalance with men waking up, because again, they feel entitled. Because ministerial servants and elders can only be men, they get that inside look, and it makes them think, whoa, this is not what we were taught to expect. Nadia Hamilton Rainey says, I like watching your rebuttals of JW broadcasting. If you didn't do them, I would have no idea what spiritual food is being dished out. I can't believe how patronising and out of touch the governing body are. Well, you and me both, Nadia. I struggle sometimes to watch those episodes. In fact, I've been struggling more recently. Obviously, I try as much as I can to keep up and to make sure I'm not delaying too much with releasing my rebuttal. But towards the end of 2017, I was falling a little bit behind, and that was mostly because I usually, when a broadcasting episode comes out, I'm on it straight away, or in the past I've been on it straight away and watching it straight away, even if there's another episode, like an earlier episode that I need to do a rebuttal to. But towards the end of last year, I wasn't doing that. If there was one that I hadn't done my rebuttal to yet, I wouldn't watch the more recent one, because I thought, no, I need to, it's too much nonsense to take in. I need to focus on the one that I haven't done yet, and then I'll move on. So that's why the November one, when you watch the November, I think it was JWB 38, you'll see that I'm completely livid and, gobsmacked at the ignorance. And that's because I had only just watched it, even though we were into December. So, no, I really do struggle with how backward and ignorant the propaganda is. And I'm glad that you appreciate my efforts to untangle it. So thank you, Nadia. Tofa Spinato, with the organisation's focus on baptising them while they're so young, I thought it best offer this advice. I went through a divorce and had it written into the divorce decree that my son was not to be baptised until he was 18 at least. Also, because the holidays are not important to JWs, you can get Christmas and Thanksgiving every year. Yes, Topher, I've repeatedly touched on this in my videos. I think it's disgusting, actually, that the governing body are increasingly preying on young people and trying to get them baptised as young as possible. I mean, even 18. When I was an 18-year-old, I didn't have the first clue about much of JW history and theology, certainly nowhere near what I know now. And that was when I was 18, never mind when I was 11, which was when I did get baptised. So yes, it's a very disturbing trend that we're seeing with Watchtower, and I think it speaks a great deal to how desperate they are. Thanks so much, by the way, for these questions. I was kind of a little bit nervous, and I'll just explain at this point. Some of you might be wondering why it's not a Hangout. This is obviously a YouTube live stream, and I spent a few hours today trying to get a Hangout set up, because in my head what I thought we could do was have like a Skype conversation where you could actually be speaking to me, and when you wanted to say something, your video could pop up, and that's what I had in my head. It actually turned out that it's physically impossible to do that. Figuring out a way of doing it. Yeah, I just had to pause there because we got disconnected. So it turned out it was just impossible in practical terms to do it. So I hope you guys are happy with the live stream, because at least we can still have this conversation, and I'm at your disposal for questions. Let's see, where are we up to? Jacqueline Shaw says, I'm very curious to hear your opinion on the recent footage of Jehovah's Witnesses standing up and waving their arms and flashing their mobile phone flashlights during the pop-up type song during an assembly recently. I have seen that video. I find it fascinating. It's not this. I guess it's a situation where it's only in certain cultures can you imagine that happening. I can't imagine that happening in the UK, because in Britain we're very stiff upper lip, and witnesses treat the faith very, very seriously as something that shouldn't be made light of in any way, shape or form, including in the sort of evangelical kind of waving arms thing. So I can imagine why in certain cultures, such as, America is more like that. I don't think I'm being unfair in saying that Americans do get more passionate on the whole, without wanting to generalize too much. But it is an interesting shift from what probably most of us are used to. And I guess it's almost inevitable, given the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses is becoming more of a televangelist, almost Pentecostal style movement, where it's all about emotion. And when they're doing the JW broadcasting testimonials, it's, oh, I'm crying, and I can kind of understand why it's moving more in that direction. I hope that's answered your question. Carmelo Rosado III says, do you find that elders and ministerial servants are more inclined to wake up the more educated they are? In my experience, if they are not successful or don't have decent careers, they tend to stay in. I don't know. I just keep thinking back to friends of mine who I was close to, who I feel are more intelligent than I am, and they're still inside. And so I don't think it's really about education or intelligence. I think it's just about the way circumstances come together, the role of the dice, what happens in your life. I don't think I would be doing this. I don't think I would be doing my activism work if it wasn't for a very, very specific chain of events that I wasn't expecting. Obviously, I wrote about it in my book, which many of you will know. And I was talking to Deanna about this not so long ago, and I just cannot imagine that things would have happened the way they worked out if it wasn't for those situations and standing down as an elder and all that kind of thing. So I don't think it's necessarily to do with intelligence or education. I think that it's to do with how passionately you believe it, and how much the organisation has its tentacles into you, and is stopping you from seeing what's on the other side of the curtain. Sherry D'Souza says, what's coming up next in Faith versus Faith? That's a good question. I kind of committed to not giving away too many spoilers, and but I don't mind telling you that the next episode, I think we're up to number 5 now, are we? Faith versus Faith number 5. It's going to be about Hasidic Jews. So you heard it here first, folks. I'm going to be speaking to a former Hasidic Jew. So, and I'm not going to tell you who, or let you know too much, but I'll leave you for the pleasant surprise. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about me kind of choosing some names that I really wanted to interview, and being pleasantly surprised when nearly all of them said yes, we'll come on the channel. So that's coming up shortly. By the way, we're now on 9:46, and I was planning on doing about an hour. So if we carry on for maybe 15 minutes and see how we go, or if things kind of naturally grind to a halt, I'll seize my opportunity to go and pour myself some whiskey and calm down from this traumatic, nerve-wracking experience of answering questions and not being able to edit my video that you're all putting me through. Canal de Urim. At the moment, we have an increasing number of people believing on the flat Earth, that are global warming deniers and anti-vaxxers. What do you think about this kind of raise? I guess that's a typo. When we have more access to information online. It's a very good question. I often think, how on earth in the 21st century do we have flat earthers? And you see videos of them being interviewed, and obviously they'll put out vlogs and everything, and it's all a big conspiracy, and the evidence is overwhelming and blah blah blah, and ultimately it boils down to cult-like thinking and an absolute refusal to look at evidence, and an assumption that the world is corrupt, the world is keeping something from us, there are nefarious forces trying to control the government and trying to control people and putting chemicals in jet engines and goodness knows what. It's ultimately it's dogmatic religious thinking, but just in a slightly different, wackier manifestation. And I don't think you can be. I would be interested to meet a flat earther. I'm sure there are flat earthers who are atheists, but it's got to be a tiny, tiny minority who are atheists. Ultimately, being a flat earther is about saying, well, the Bible says that the earth is flat, or in places infers strongly that the earth is flat, and therefore the earth is flat. That seems to be predominantly what it boils down to for flat earthers. Carmelo Rosado III says, I may still have been in if I had not been ordered by the Judicial Committee to protect a pedophile. Wow. I'm raising my kids in this cult. The thought gives me chills. Yeah. Well, first of all, what a thing to go through, to be called upon to protect that sort of person, the lowest of humanity. So I'm sure you're relieved to no longer be in that situation. But yeah, it's astonishing to think how a twist of fate could change things. I mean, I was talking to Deanna about this recently, because we heard that I don't want to kind of go into this in too much detail because I don't want to embarrass anyone, but we heard that two people who went to one of the events in America, we heard that two people who attended one of those events ended up starting a relationship. So they started a relationship because they met each other at one of the events for my tour, and then your mind just boggles, because you think, well, if it wasn't for my activism, those two wouldn't have met each other, and for all we know, they're going to go on and have a blissfully happy life together and have children, and then there will actually be children brought into this world who are only alive because of my YouTube channel. And my YouTube channel wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for, again, a very a far out, unexpected, unconceivable chain of events that led to me waking up. So it's one of those things where you can't really get your head around it, but you just have to, and you just think, well, that's how life works. Life is just a never-ending roll of the dice as to how things happen. So, but it's nice, isn't it? It's a nice story. Let me see. I'm trying to make sure I've not missed too many questions. Sherry asks, We loved seeing your collabs with Seth Andrews, Matt Dillahunty, and of course Alex O'Connor. Any other collaborations like that coming up in 2018? Yes. Yes. I can't overstate how excited I am about some of the people I'll be speaking to just in January. So there's going to be some really big videos that are lined up just for January. And then what I like to think is that the more I interview people, the more that side of the channel will just kind of take on a life of its own. And you know, the more you do it, the easier it is to approach people and say, oh well, can you come on the channel because these guys have been on the channel, and so forth. So I'm interested to see where things go. But yes, there are some big collaborations coming up just in January. So stay tuned for that. Carmelo Rosado again. Sorry, meant to say legal department. I forgive you, Carmelo. Jacqueline Shaw. Just a comment, your convention video series are my equivalent of anticipating summer blockbuster movies. They are tons of work, I'm sure, but absolutely essential for those still in. Wow, thank you so much, Jacqueline. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with those videos because, as you can probably tell, they do take a lot of work to put together. And I kind of learned my story from the Worst Convention Ever series, where I ended up doing 9 videos. And I was, after the 9 videos had ended, I was like, never again, you know. And if I do have to do convention rebuttals, it's going to be shorter. It's going to be 3 videos. So then for the 2017 conventions, I just did the 3 videos. And even that was difficult because you're not wanting to miss anything, and you also have all of this horrendous material that really needs to be, you know, unraveled. So, but I think that, I mean, obviously I haven't seen the 2018 convention videos yet, but we'll see what happens. But I'm definitely down for doing that on a yearly basis, so that every year, for as long as I can do this, which will hopefully be a while, I'd like to do the convention rebuttals every year, because I think that it's a good way of explaining to witnesses how they're being manipulated. Because if a witness is waking up and they come on the channel, they obviously remember going to the convention and they think of it as an event, so they're personally invested. Oh, I went to that convention and I can remember this happening and that happening, and you know, what's your take on it? So no, I feel that those videos are important, and I'm going to continue doing them as long as I can. More questions coming in, and there's me thinking I can gradually edge my way towards the door, but let's carry on until at least the hour is up, and then we'll see what happens. Canal de Urim, what's your opinion about Donald Trump and the current politics situation in the United States of America? I think I've been clear about Donald Trump. I don't like him. I feel sorry for America. I mean, especially when you look at what he was tweeting sort of in the last 24 hours. I mean, there was the recent one about buttons where he was comparing the size of nuclear buttons. I mean, we're entering the twilight zone at the point where a statesman is making comments like that. But then the comments in the last 24 hours where he was talking about how, what was the phrase? He's a stable genius or something like that. I mean, honestly, if you're a Trump supporter, by all means tell me what accomplishments of his you're proud of. Because presumably that's why you would vote for him, is because he makes a promise and you feel as though he's the man to deliver on it. So I don't know, maybe there's something that I'm unaware of that he's achieved that outweighs all of the negative stuff, but I can't quite see that from where I'm sitting. And I feel as though worldwide there's kind of a disturbing lurch towards the right. I don't consider myself an all-out leftist because, especially when you look at the regressive left, I think that it's possible to be too extreme. It's possible to be too politically correct, for example. So my political kind of views are probably a little bit in the left and a little bit in the right. So I try to avoid centrist, but probably that's what I am. But I struggle to understand how you could get behind Trump at the moment. But obviously we're all different. We all have different views, and I don't expect everyone to agree with me on that. Tova Spinato, my wife and I save your videos for Saturday and Sunday mornings with our coffee. You rock, keep it up. Well, thank you very much, Topher. Isn't it great to have Saturday and Sunday mornings to ourselves now that we're free from the cult? So I'm really touched whenever I hear of people, watching my videos, because obviously I make them to be watched. So whenever I hear of people say, this is when we watch them and this is how we watch them, it always brings a smile to my face. Dan Tintasan says, wife is mad at me for watching this apostate stream. Crikey. Well, I hope I've not caused too much marital friction simply by having a YouTube live stream. Please pass on my apologies, I guess. But thank you for joining nonetheless. Carmelo Rosado III, replying to Dan, I was there a few years back, but in all seriousness, my wife woke up after seeking therapy. Yes, that's the thing when you're waking up and you're married. This is actually something that I write about in my book, because I talk about the different things that happen in a family when someone's waking up, and especially when it's a marriage. I mean, it gets even more stressful if there are children involved. But I talk a little bit about my advice for people who are in a marriage and they're waking up but their husband or wife is still inside. And I have a little bit of advice for that situation based on my own experience. But I think it's mostly just a case of being very patient and being very kind and being very loving and not thrusting information in people's faces, but letting them come to you, because especially when it's a marriage, they will come to you. You don't need to go chasing them around, because they want to salvage their spouse, they want to salvage their loved one, their life partner back to the fold. So you can guarantee that they're going to come for you, and it's just a question of you being ready with like a calm, reasonable answer when they do that. And again, not pressuring them too much, and just being willing to communicate and to communicate in a frank and honest way, because ultimately all marriages depend on communication, don't they? Okay, Nadia Hamilton Rainey says, thanks for doing this. I've enjoyed it. Have you read Sapiens? I thought it was very interesting, both from an evolutionary and religious perspective. I'm ashamed to say I haven't read Sapiens, but I have heard of it, and if you're recommending it, then I'll by all means take a closer look. But I'm glad that you've enjoyed the stream. I'm still a little bit nervous doing it, because again, I'm a little bit of a control freak when it comes to videos, and I like to be able to edit things. And if I humiliate myself and say something ridiculous, at least I can edit it out and do everything very cleverly so that no one notices. But when it's a live stream, it's just there, isn't it? And you have to live with it. So, but I actually really like how this has gone, and I'd be happy. I think I like to reserve the right to not put up the live stream. But I think in this instance it's been so successful, I'd be quite happy to let everyone see it. And again, if you're watching this, let's see, if you're watching this after it's gone up on the channel, just to kind of see what it's all about, I'm speaking to my patrons who are backers on the Greece level and higher, because I do a Babylon level, which is where you get a video and a video exclusively for patrons, giving you an update on what's happening behind the scenes on the channel. That's for $1 or more. That's the Babylon level. Then there's the Medo-Persian level, which is $5 or more, and that allows you to vote on the video topics for the next month. Then there's the Greece level, which is $10 or more, and that gives you access to this live stream, which I will be doing every month from here on in. So I guess I've got to get used to this nerve-wracking kind of answering questions. And then there's another level, which is the Rome level, which is $15 or more, and that's where you get entered in a book draw to win a free book. And I just think the rewards are an excellent way of me just giving something back, because as I was trying to say at the beginning, it just feels weird to be taking all of this, all of these donations and this support and kindness and generosity. And I understand that loads of you guys were saying, well, we're just happy to support your work. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate that the kindness is being extended without any strings attached. But at the same time, I do just like the idea of giving something back, which is why I think the Patreon rewards are such a great idea. And they're also helping me to kind of raise my game a little bit by pushing the envelope and getting outside my comfort zone. And this is very much outside my comfort zone, because I don't like, again, putting stuff on YouTube that I've not had a chance to edit. But that's what I'm gonna do. I've said I'd do it, and now I'm gonna do it. Let me scroll back and see what questions I've missed. Canalda Urim, what's your opinion on The Last Jedi? I absolutely loved The Last Jedi. Deanna and I went to see it twice, and I think the second viewing in some ways was more enjoyable, because I was able to just kind of sit back and absorb the story more and look for some more kind of hidden gems and really analyse what was being said. So the second viewing was good, but also the first viewing was good, because basically the first viewing, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but there's a key issue that's going on with the plot. I guess I can give away spoilers. I mean, come on, if you're gonna watch it, we're already on the 6th of January. Basically, I spent the whole of almost the whole of the first viewing genuinely wondering whether Rey was going to turn to the dark side. And I'm never going to have that experience again, because I know that she doesn't. So every time I watch The Last Jedi from this point forward, I'm not going to have that issue. But the first viewing, I very much was thinking, she's she's going to join Kylo Ren. That was what I was thinking. So I really thoroughly enjoyed The Last Jedi. And that's exactly what movies should do. They should make you panic, they should engage you emotionally, they should make you think. And yeah, I loved it. I can't speak highly enough of it. And yeah, please go see it. Shame on you if you've not seen it. Okay, we're now over the 1 hour mark, but I'm going to try and bat off some of these questions which you very kindly sent in. My two boys, 7 and 5 years old, spend their Saturday mornings sleeping in and watching cartoons. That's what Saturday mornings are for, and that's exactly how Jessica spends her Saturday mornings. So well done, Carmelo. Alicia Rondeau, again, I hope I'm pronouncing Rondeau correctly, or Rondeau. Thank you so much for this chat and all of your activist work. Well, thank you, Alicia, for those kind words, and it really does motivate me to carry on. I guess in a way this isn't too painful, because it's just nice to be able to interact with you guys in this way. Because otherwise, when it's just a post on the Patreon page and people are just commenting and you're replying, it's not got the same kind of energy to it. So I quite like this. I could get used to it. Jacqueline Johnson, Will you be producing another Taking on Tony? I just love those. Thank you. Well, the Taking on Tony isn't supposed to be a series. I did the very first Taking on Tony. I think that was in response to his visit to the Italy branch when he first mentioned tight pants, and I think that was my very first Taking on Tony. And it just so happened that the next time I wanted to do a rebuttal just for Tony Morris, I thought, well, I'll just make it another Taking on Tony, and then the latest one, well, that can be Taking on Tony 3. So it's just it's not, I haven't set out to make that series, but that it's just kind of happened organically that's what I'm doing. So I guess it all depends on Tony Morris and when is the next time that he says something outrageous that I can sink my teeth into. Sherry D'Souza says it's a safe place with us to stay to say something ridiculous. So thank you for this chat. We've loved it. Thank you again. Well, I'm really pleased that you've enjoyed it. I frankly have enjoyed it, and some really good questions. Hopefully I've not made too much of an idiot of myself. So yes, thank you so much. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Jacqueline Johnson says, yes, this and all of your work, Lloyd, has been immeasurably helpful in waking up and returning to life. Thank you, Jacqueline. I'm really glad that it's had that effect, and it motivates me to do more. Canal de Urim, by the way, congratulations on the Patreon names. Yes, I was quite pleased with my system for rewards. So again, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. And if I can think of something really special for the Anglo-American level, that will be interesting. But I haven't thought of anything yet. But for now, the ones that I've got, there's at least something there. And Jacqueline Shaw says, this live chat was fantastic. It went perfectly. No editing needed. Thank you, Lloyd. Excited to see what 2018 brings on your channel, book and films. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I'm excited about 2018. It does feel as though the channel is moving forward, and honestly, it's been a major boost having Patreon, because before it was just purely a case of relying on the Google ad revenue to justify spending all of that time making videos, because obviously I'm not really doing it for myself anymore. I don't need catharsis from getting in front of the camera. This is basically my job now. So to have all of you guys who are just kind of stepping up to the plate and saying, no, we are your bosses, we're going to pay you to do this, I think it's just incredible. And in fact, when Alex O'Connor was here last month, he was also commenting that it's just astonishing how Patreon's just kind of come out of nowhere and allowed creators to do that where they couldn't really do it before. So thank you so much to all of you for getting behind the channel in this way. Jacqueline Johnson, you've done a great job today, Lloyd. You don't seem nervous at all. I just hide it very, very well. That's one thing you learn to do as a kind of speaker and ministerial servant and elder. It's to hide your nerves. So, but you're very kind. And Carmelo Rosado III, I'll take this as the final comment. 1 hour may not be enough time for this in the future. I agree. But hey, I'm sure you guys have all got things to do. But I really have enjoyed this. So hopefully we can do it again in the not too distant future. I now have the awkward task of trying to close this damn thing. Let's see, what do I do? There's an option there. Oh, crumbs. I think I'm going to try and close it, but but thank you so much to all of you for joining. Again, if you're watching this after the fact, it would be great to have your input on these in future monthly live streams. Go to the Patreon page and you can check out how you can do that. But I guess all that remains is to say thank you for watching. And honestly, everyone, please take care and enjoy your weekend. Okay, bye everyone.